Is your direct marketing lawful under GDPR? With the GDPR's implementation in May 2018, you need to ensure your direct marketing activities are GDPR compliant. In short, this means that you'll need to prove that you have directly and recently actively confirmed consent for you to send your marketing materials from every individual to whom you sent it. That consent must be detailed and well-informed consent, meaning that the person who says yes must have meant it in relation to every activity you want to carry out in relation to their data. So, that will cover consent for you to send them content, consent for you to store their details in a customer distribution or mailing list, consent for you to contact them about opportunities, consent for you to share their data, consent for you to add them to other distribution lists, and so on. Let's look at this now in a bit more detail to understand how that all plays out. If you've seen our other resources on GDPR, then you'll know that to process personal data lawfully, you need to have a legal basis for doing so. In the context of direct marketing, this normally means that you must have the consent of the person to whom the data belongs. That person's called the data subject. There are a couple of exceptions which I'm not going to cover here as they are much rarer, but you'll find them in our guide to GDPR and marketing. If you rely on the data subject consent and the legal basis for you handling their personal data and processing it, then you've got to make sure you've properly obtained it, and this involves a lot more under the GDPR than under the UK's old data protection regime. For example, consent from the individual person needs to be granular. In other words, you need to have consent to each and every option for the different ways in which you may use the data, by what methods the individual may be contacted, and what they may be contacted about. If you don't have consent for a particular activity involving that person's data, you may not lawfully use it. Your intended usage and any communication you make about it needs to be fully transparent, so that you can show that you have informed consent to do what you want to do with the data. Informed consent means that you'll need to let the data subject know how you'll use their data. The GDPR also requires that consent must be provided to you by affirmative action on the part of the data subject. So, you can no longer rely on pre-ticketed opt-in boxes for consent. Individuals will need to directly tick a box and positively confirm if they wish to be contacted by you. Essentially, individuals should have a choice about how they're marketed to, by what means, about what, and regarding how their data is used. So, to be GDPR compliant, you'll need to review the consents that you have in place from your customers, any target customers, and the other contacts to whom you want to send your marketing material. If these consents don't meet the GDPR standards, think twice about relying on them for your direct marketing activity. Whatever the basis for you handling and processing personal data, you must also ensure that your privacy notices are updated to be GDPR compliant, and that they're transparent about how you'll be processing data that you receive. Your privacy notices need to be easily understood, setting out the legal basis for processing, and they should also spell out to individuals their rights under the GDPR, including their right to object to direct marketing. In addition, if an individual objects to your direct marketing, then in almost all cases, unless you fall under one of the rare exceptions, you must stop direct marketing to them immediately. There's lots of great advice in our guides on data protection and the role and remit of the GDPR. You can always use our Fast View service as well to get a great view from one of our experts, if you're not sure exactly how a particular rule applies to an activity that you're planning to carry out.